We are in 2 Corinthians chapter 10. And if you remember, Paul kind of was moving from points to point and kind of going from one thought to another. And it's not so much that it's just disjointed. Sometimes it seems like, well, those thoughts that he had between chapters 8, 9, 10, and 11 were kind of going from one point to another. But there was a flow because he was talking about spiritual aspects and spiritual things. But then he came down in chapter 8 and 9 and just talked about some basic stuff. But if you think about it, it's not disjointed because you can never do the high and the important spiritual things unless you first do the what? The basic stuff. All right? Nobody becomes an elite athlete in track until they first learn to do what?
The basics.
They got to learn you got to at least learn how to walk, run, jump, balance, little things. Then you can get out there and try to compete to be the what? To be the very best. And that's true about anything. And so that's really what Paul is trying to emphasize. But now he's going back to an aspect of the spiritual battle. Because when you're doing the basics and the natural, you still got to keep in mind that we are dealing with a spiritual battle. And so he's saying now, but never forget that this is kind of like what we're going to see as he goes back into that today. So let's take a quick listen. 2 Corinthians, and we're in chapter 10. Let's see what he's got to say here.
Chapter 10. Now I, Paul, myself beseech you by the meekness and gentleness of Christ, who in presence am base among you, but being absent am bold toward you. But I beseech you, that I may not be bold when I am present with that confidence, wherewith I think to be bold against some, which think of us as if we walked according to the flesh. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God, to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, and having in a readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. Do ye look on things after the outward appearance? If any man trust to himself that he is Christ's, let him of himself think this again, that as he is Christ's, even so are we Christ's. For though I should boast somewhat more of our authority, which the Lord hath given us for edification, and not for your destruction, I should not be ashamed, that I may not seem as if I would terrify you by letters. For his letters, say they, are weighty and powerful, but his bodily presence is weak, and his speech contemptible. Let such an one think this, that such as we are in word by letters when we are absent, such will we be also in deed when we are present. For we dare not make ourselves of the number, or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves, and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise. But we will not boast of things without our measure, but according to the measure of the rule which God hath distributed to us, a measure to reach even unto you. For we stretch not ourselves beyond our measure, as though we reached not unto you. For we are come as far as to you also in preaching the gospel of Christ, not boasting of things without our measure, that is, of other men's labors, but having hope, when your faith is increased, that we shall be enlarged by you according to our rule abundantly, to preach the gospel in the regions beyond you, and not to boast in another man's line of things made ready to our hand. But he that glorieth, let him glory in the Lord. For not he that commendeth himself is approved, but whom the Lord commendeth.
All right. Very, very important chapter. All right. And we're going to go through this. I'm going to try to move along because if I really try to hit every point, we might not get through it because there's a lot in here. And when you get to actually just one thought, we could actually spend a time just on that one thought. And we'll see that in just a bit. But let's look and see how he opens up with this chapter, and keeping in mind that this is all one letter. It was all written and it was all combined, but as it later on they broke it up into chapters, we can kind of grab the thoughts point by point. So he says, now I, Paul, myself, beseech you by the meekness and gentleness of Christ. All right, so he's letting them know that I'm coming to you and I'm talking to you from an aspect of meekness. I'm not trying to overpower you, and gentleness. I'm not trying to force your hand or push you. I'm trying to convince you. I'm trying to show you something. And that's a talent. That's a beautiful thing, because you got to learn that balance between, do you make a person do something, or do you try to, through good instruction, good methodology, good examples, persuade them and get them to see that it is the right thing to do. Sometimes we just give up, and we say, well, you know what, whether you see it or not, you need to do this, right? You're going to do it because obviously you don't see it, you don't understand the importance of it, so I'm just going to have to make you do it. But you don't want to. Who wants to make a person do something all their life? Nobody. Because after a while, you do what? You get tired, and what do? You just give up. You say, you know what? Go ahead, do it whatever way you want to do it. But what you want to do is, through meekness and through gentleness, allow a person to see the proper point of view that you're trying to bring to them, so that they get to the point and they go, you know what? I see what you're trying to say. I understand it. I recognize now what your efforts were all about. And they then begin to buy into it and to do it themselves. And that's an important aspect, an important process that we have in trying to persuade people about the ways of the Lord and what Scripture says. All right, with the meekness of Christ, who in the present I am based among you, but being absent I'm bold towards you. Now, what he's talking here is that there's a statement that he's going to bring out. When Paul writes, and you look at the Bible, 2/3 of the epistles are written by Paul. So obviously, one of Paul's gifts was the gift of apostolic writing. He was writing as of the Lord. He was given the authority to write as the Lord gave it to him, and it became part of Holy Scripture. So Paul had that authority. The things that he put down by pen was just not idle thought. These things were directed and guided by the Spirit of God and became part of the canon or the books of the Scripture that we actually based our life on to in turn get eternal life. All right? So he has a great gift. So he is, when he's saying I'm bold and absent, he's saying when I'm not there, I'm writing to you. But his writings are just not no ordinary writings. These are the writings that come directly from the Lord, and God had inspired him to write these writings. Okay, so verse 2 says, "But I beseech you that I may not be bold when I am present." You see that? So he goes, I don't want to be this way because when I get to you, we want to have what? Fellowship. We want to be able to come together and enjoy each other's company. But if the meekness and the gentleness of my persuasion of talking to you does not convince you, then when I come to you, guess what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to be bold. So he said, so listen to my bold writing, so that when I come into you in my presence, we can enjoy the fellowship and the joy of coming together in Christ. But if you don't hear what I'm saying to you in writing, when I come there, I got to then do it with boldness. It's like a parent. You tell one child to go tell another child, tell so and so to go take out the garbage. Now, you're not in that child's presence. The younger child went and told the older child, go take out the garbage. And the older child told the younger child, get out of here. Now, you sent him a statement of an instruction. And if he does it, if he obeys that, if he does it properly, when you go in there, you see the garbage has been taken out, you can say good morning, how was your day, you now can have a good. But when you get there and the younger child said, well, he say, I ain't taking out nothing. Now when you go in there, you got to go in there? Bold. You're going in there bold. Who do you think you are? What do you think you talking about? You ain't taking out no garbage. I sent word to you. I gave a message to you to take that garbage out. And you're going to take it out. So now you got to go through that. So this is what Paul is saying. He's saying, I'm writing to you, and I'm trying to show to you that in my presence, I want to be the joy of fellowship. But if you don't hear the writings I'm writing to you, then I might have to come to you and show you that I can be bold too. And he's going to deal with this some more. All right. This is verse 2 again. Let's just go through that. But I beseech you that I may not be bold when I am present with you, with that confidence, wherewith I think to be bold against some. So he says there are some I know I'm going to have to be bold against when I go see them, which think of us as if we walk according to the flesh. So he said, because the people that I got to go to and be bold with are people that just look at me as though I'm just I'm just talking as Paul. Not understanding, I'm talking not by just what I'm saying. This is what God gave me to tell you. So I got all confidence to tell you. I got all confidence to tell you that no, this is going to happen. And I can be as dogmatic and as bold as I want to be because it ain't my authority. This is the Lord's authority. And when God tells you to do something, you know. No matter who come and tell you, well, I wouldn't do that if I was you. You'd be like, well, you ain't me. Because you got the confidence. All right? When you know that this is something that the Lord wants you to do. And so it's important, and so Paul is letting them know. He says, some people think I'm coming to you as though I walk according to the flesh. My instructions and my writings don't come from the flesh. They come from God. All right? And so he's letting them know that's where I'm speaking to you from. All right? Verse 3. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. You know what Paul is saying? Yeah, I'm a fleshly person. I walk in flesh and blood and bone just like you do. But my warfare is not a fleshly warfare. All right? So he says, so when I come and I see there's an enemy, I got weapons for you. Now, I know how to take care of spiritual enemies. And he goes on and he talks about it. Look what he says in verse 4. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but what? Mighty. Paul's like, I'm not coming to you with no pop gun. When I come to you, boy, it's going to be some spiritual warfare. There's going to be some serious clashing. The weapons of our warfare are mighty. By myself? No. Through God. To the pulling down of strongholds. I'm going to yank folks down. I'm going to yank you right out of that spot. You're going to try to stand there and stand against me spiritually? I'll yank you right down. Paul said, I got that authority. I'm not walking just in my flesh. Yeah, I may be a small, puny man, but when I stand and stand in the things of the Lord and I'm fighting against spiritual wickedness, you better watch out. I know what I'm doing. I've been given the instruction. I'm a kung fu master in the spirit. He's like, I know how to take care of business, so to speak. All right? So he says, I'm going to pull this stuff down, and look at what he says. And in verse 5, and how does he do it? Number 1, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. All right? Look at that. And bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Now he's letting you know that I'm going to give you my strategy. And why am I going to give you my strategy? Because I'm just that bad. You can't stop me. I was watching a documentary on Michael Jordan. And he was telling them that actually that wasn't Michael Jordan, it was Larry Bird. And Larry Bird would come in the game, and Larry Bird would be like, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna go to this corner, I'm gonna do a spin move, and I'm gonna stop right in your face. I'm gonna knock down the jumper. And the guy was like, he got the ball, he went up to the corner, did a spin move, stopped, pulled up for the jumper, and knocked it right down. He said, and then he'd come back and say, I told you what I was gonna do. Why didn't you stop me? Why couldn't they stop him? Because he was just that bad. The boy could play. And he had confidence. And he knew it. And he worked out. He said, Paul is doing the same thing. Paul said, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. Look what he's saying. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cast down imaginations. Now, that right there is the biggest thing. You remember in the book of Genesis? Let's go to it and read it. What is that? Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. Let's read that. Chapter 6, verse 5. You see it? Look what it says. And God saw that the wickedness of men was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only wicked, was only evil continually. You see that? Right? Paul's saying that's what I'm coming to take care of. All right, look at this. All right, he says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. You remember the Tower of Babel? You remember that? Let's go to Genesis 11 and 6. High thing, right? Let's go to Genesis 11 and 6. The Tower of Babel was a what? A high thing. And look, actually, it started at the 5th verse, Genesis 11 and 5. Actually, let's go back up to the 4th. We'll go up to the 4th. And he said, and they said, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down and to see the city and the tower which the children of men built. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have what? Imagined to do. Every high imagination. So they were saying, we're not going to listen to God. We're going to prove that we can do things on our own. Look at the technology we got. Look at what we're able to build. And if we can imagine and do this, then we can do anything that we want to do. And God's, he's saying, if they stay like this, and what did he have to do to slow their progress? He did what? He confounded their language, exactly. But we are living in a day now where our language is becoming, again, what? United. All right? We're trying to bring back this one, because they wanted to all be one. And so now we're coming back to a what? One world system, this whole new world order that we're trying to get back to. So I say, watch out. God didn't let that happen back then, and he ain't going to let it happen back here either. He's going to come in again. All right? So every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God don't want to know that God is who he says he is. Why? Because I know I'm smarter than that. I don't have to believe in those superstitions of God and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how we can be so smart and you say, well, I got so much knowledge. Okay, then fine. Just live then without anything else. Be self-existent. Well, I need air. Well, what do you mean you need air? If you know so much, just live on, just be. Just live on your own. Don't eat no food, don't, just be. Because that's how God is. God says, I'm self-sustained. I am God all by myself. He don't need nothing to exist. And he created all things. But anything else that exists needs something else. So no matter how bad you think you are, the minute somebody take your air, you're gonna be gagging like a little pig on the ground. Just trying to get some air. So you are not that bad, because the minute they take anything, take this planet, move it 100 miles away from the sun, you freeze to death. You can't. You're so fragile that you'll freeze. Bring it 100 miles closer to the sun, you'll burn up. So now how bad are you really now? But you're going to exalt yourself against the knowledge of God? You know so much about, well, I don't believe there is a God. You don't believe, well, why do you are set right here, perfect spot, just take care of you. Just like we got to do a baby. You got to put a baby in a perfect spot. You got to be in a good crib, because if you don't put the baby in the right kind of crib with the walls around and everything, what's going to happen to the baby? It eventually will crawl out and hurt itself. And so God got humans and got you in this little perfect spot here, because if you go anywhere else, you just die. All right? And so that's how we are in this realm, in this day, how we live now. Now there may come a time when we enter into eternity that we won't have to be sustained by air and food and temperature and all that. It won't matter to us. But right now, it just shows you how weak we are. But yet you're going to be so bad, so rough, so tough. You can't even step off the planet. And you say, well, that's a difficult thing to do. That ain't difficult for God. Now, how are you going to just say, I know more than what God knows? See, but then everything that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, he's going to Paul said, I'm pulling that stuff down. All right? Exalts itself against the knowledge of God and bring into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. All right? So you got to bring every thought. Because let me tell you, stuff comes to your mind. And you know what? You know why the stuff comes to your mind? Because you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. And plus, the enemy likes to bring stuff to your mind. All right? And so the wicked imaginations that we have today are fueled by everything. You can't turn on the TV. You can't look in magazines. You can't hardly listen to the radio. And stuff is just fueling craziness and all kinds of imagination, just throwing thoughts in your mind. And this is the devil just trying to pound in your brain stuff and ideas and thoughts and lusts and wants and cravings that are against God. Just continuously, just throwing them in there. All right? And so what happens? You're going to have to find a way to filter your mind and condition your thoughts. And just like Paul said, bring into captivity all those thoughts. All right? So I got to be able to do that. So Paul's saying this is what I have the authority to do, the power to do. All right, verse 6. And having in a readiness to revenge all disobedience. So Paul's saying, I have the ability to, when you disobey, I have the ability to come and take action against your disobedience in accordance to the level of your disobedience. That's what that aspect of revenge means. It means how bad you want to be, doing wrong, I can get that bad doing right for the Lord. All right? It's one of those things, when we get in the book of Revelations, you're going to see how when God says he's going to let his vengeance go. Revenge against all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. All right? So, look at verse 7. Do we look on things after the outward appearance? Are you looking at things according to the what? Outward appearance. Because now Paul's saying all this, when I get there, this is what I can do. I got authority, power to do, because I don't walk after the flesh. I walk after the spirit. Now, if you look at me on the outward appearance, you're going to be like, are you kidding me? Because, we don't have no photoshops or nothing on the pictures of Paul. But when you look at some of the historical records and different accounts that were written, they say that he was a puny little guy, with bulging eyes, bald head. He was just, he wasn't all that to look at. You look at him.
You say he was bald head, I said, was he black?
But then he looked like you, right? Or me. But, just he didn't look like he was an opposing force. He's just like a little old runt type of a guy. But he said, don't he goes.
Isn't there a scripture though that talks about him saying, like his look?
Yeah.
He was a man short in stature or something like that.
Yeah. It talks about his, a little bit, but that's how you're able to put some of it together. He talks about how people will say that, you give your eyes to help me. Well, they're saying that, he's saying that because he had bad eyesight and had some kind of eye sores and stuff. And some people believe that's what Paul prayed about when Paul said that he beseeched the Lord 3 times that he would take this from him. But God said, my grace is sufficient. All right, but that's all circumstantial thoughts and things. Well, we don't really know, but it definitely could be. All right. So do you look at me after the outward appearance? Is what he's saying. If any man trust to himself that he is Christ, let him of himself think this again, that as he is Christ, even so are we Christ. So he's saying, keep this in mind. You think you belong to the Lord? Listen, let me explain something to you. So do I. I belong to the Lord. And understand, I don't come to you as Paul. I'm coming to you as a what? As a messenger and servant of the Lord. Okay? So when the police officer comes to you, the police officer's name might be Joe, and when he comes to you, he's not coming to you as Joe, the guy that lives down on such a street. When the police officer comes to you, when he's on duty, he comes to you as an officer of the what? Of the law. And so that's what Paul's saying. You might see me as Paul, but I'm not coming to you in Paul. I'm coming to you as a messenger and servant of what? Of Christ. And that's what you have to understand and recognize. It's not just me. All right, so I'm of Christ. For though I should boast somewhat more of our authority, Paul saying, and I could really boast even more of our authority. And he's uncomfortable doing this. It's not something he enjoys doing, which the Lord hath given us for edification and not for your destruction. See, my authority was given to edify you, not to destroy you. He said, and that's the whole purpose of it. But in going through it, I have a power to cast stuff down, to throw stuff out. I have authority to wreak some havoc. I should not be ashamed. All right, and he could talk about this, and he shouldn't be ashamed. But he's not very self-exalting, which is obvious. I mean, that's not something that he is, because that's not how the Lord is. Verse 9. That I may not seem as if I would terrify you by letter. All right. For his letters, say they, are weighty and powerful, but his bodily presence is what? Weak. All right. So this is what they already saying, what we already talked about. All right. He talks all big and bad and bold in his letters, but when you look at him, you be like, wait a minute, that's Paul? Mm-hmm. Please, I'll kick him down the street. No, you ain't. It ain't gonna happen. You may think you can. And his speech is contemptible. In other words, and even when he talks, it's like back in the day, if you never saw Mike Tyson and you heard him speak, before you saw him, you would be like, Mike Tyson. Well, when I get out there, I'm gonna really knock him out. I'm gonna really hit him. I'm gonna hurt him. I'm not gonna have any mercy on him. And he talked like a little cartoon.
Mm-hmm. Talking just like that.
But then when you saw him, you were like, whoa, wait a minute.
That might.
All right. So, when you look at this, Paul, he wasn't even a powerful speaker. His letters were way more powerful than his speech. Remember once when we were going through Acts, when Paul preached, he was preaching, and there was a guy sitting in the window, and what happened? He fell asleep. Paul in the natural was probably a little boring. Wasn't all that dramatic and didn't have a whole lot of whimsical things but somehow or another, when he started writing stuff on paper, the Spirit got on him, man, and he produced 2/3 of this New Testament epistles that we have here. So they said, well, he don't even speak well. His bodily presence ain't that much. Look at 11. Let such and one think that such as we are in word by letter when we are absent, such will we be also in deed when we are present. Paul's saying, now you got to understand that I do have the ability to be that, because I do have apostolic authority. Right? Now what does that mean? You remember when the apostles were gathered together in Jerusalem, and everybody was selling all their stuff and bringing it to the apostles' feet. Mm-hmm. And you remember when the couple they sold their house, and they brought the money to Paul and said, well, this is what we sold it for, and brought it to Peter. And Peter said, why would you lie and say this is what we sold it for, when you didn't sell it for that? But they wanted to get the glory, because everybody was saying, wow, look at how much this guy sacrificed. He went out, sold his whole house, and gave the whole house to the work of the Lord, all the money. And people were doing that. So, but then, Ananias and Sapphira, that was their name, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. They went out and did that. They said, well, you know what? Let's say we sold it for 80,000 when we really sold it for 120. So they said, well, here's $80. We sold our house. Y'all can have all the money. And people said, why are you lying? You're not lying to me, a man. Who you lying to?
The Holy Spirit.
You're lying to the Holy Spirit, because I'm working in apostolic authority. So when you're lying to me, you're not lying to me. You think you're just lying to Peter? You're lying to God. And there's a lot of authority that God gives that to. That's important to keep in mind. So that's why it's important to recognize when someone has the authority over you, you should give that person their proper respect. All right? We tell our kids, do that in school, because the Lord works in all kinds of aspects. The same thing with parents. When you're dealing with children and parents, God has given the parents the ability to have authority. And that's not an authority given to that parent by the parent. The authority was given to the parent by God. All right? And so it's important to keep that in mind. Verse 12, right? For we dare not make ourselves of the number or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they, measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise. So Paul is saying, this is what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to be commending myself and number myself and telling you, well, look at how better I am in comparison to Mark or to Luke or to this other apostle or these other false apostles that come amongst you, which we're going to talk about next week in chapter 11. He said, I'm not comparing myself to them. And because, see, that's what some of these folks that are coming to you, because remember, Paul wasn't the only one trying to minister to the Corinthian church. There was a slew of people coming through there saying all kinds of stuff and trying to persuade them against Paul. But Paul's not this and that. You need to listen to same thing like we got today. You turn on the TV and you got this group and that group and that group. And some of these groups are great. They're fine. They're wonderful. But you got other ones that they only got one thing in mind. They just want your money. Other ones just want your authority. They want power. They want recognition. People got all kinds of agendas. And Paul is like, I don't compare myself to all that. But they make the mistake because they compare themselves one to another. Well, see, we got the biggest congregation in the world. Well, how are they comparing themselves? They compare themselves to other congregations. Well, we got the biggest choir. We got the most, and so they're comparing themselves to what? To each other. And Paul's like, that's not how you do business. That's not how you work in the spirit. You don't compare. Because remember, we go back to what Jesus said. When Jesus watched the offering, who gave the most?
The widow.
The little widow. But she only gave 2 mites. So when you look at it from that standpoint, they, from their vision, were looking at all these Pharisees, and the one thing that they like to do was to drop those big sacks of money in there. Everybody else thought that guy that dropped the big sack of money gave the most. When in reality, that's not true. According to Christ, that's not what happened. Christ said this woman gave more than anybody else. Because you got to know how to look at it. You can't look at it from the natural. You got to look at it as a spiritual reality. And so that's a keen lesson to us, that you just can't look at volume. You got to look at what is working in the spirit. And if you don't, then you can get misguided and get misled. Misleaded? I ain't never professed to be an English major, but that ain't even right either. All right, let me get back to what I'm doing here. All right. But they measure themselves by themselves, and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. But we will not boast of things without our measure, but according to the measure and the rule which God hath distributed to us. A measure to reach even unto what? Unto you. So he said, I'm measuring myself by the rule of what God has given me to do. And God told me to reach you. That's what you want to measure me by. Measure a person by what God has called them to do. So, when God says, I need you to go and take 2 talents and turn it into 4. And he gives another person, he says, I want you to take 5 talents, turn it into 10. So when the person that takes 2 turns it to 4, the person that takes 5 turns it to 10, which one did the best work? They both did the same. So they get rewarded what? Equally. Even though one turns in what? 4, another one turns in 10. All right? But they both did equal work because they did what they were told to do. The one that buries it and said, well, I'm not going to multiply it at all. He was given 1, and all he needed to do was turn it into what? Into 2. But he said, I don't want to do any of that. I'm just going to sit here. And what did Jesus say to that person? He called them wicked and unprofitable. You've been given talent and you refuse to use it. You've been given ability and you refuse to use it. You've been given spiritual instruction, guidance, and you refuse to use it. And God says, well, because you refuse to use it, you're wasting my gifts that I gave to you. And what does God say about that? He calls that type of person what? Wicked. Because you only want to do what you want to do and not acknowledge the gift that I've given you. It's important to keep that in mind. So Paul's saying, that's what I'm doing. All right, so verse 13, but we will not boast of things without our measure. All right, I read that already, right? Verse 14, for we stretch not ourselves beyond our measure. See that? Look at that. I'm not trying to go beyond either. So that's why I don't compare myself to other people. So God gives you the ability to turn 2 into 4. Don't feel bad because somebody else turned 5 into what? Into 10. Do what you have been gifted to do. And Paul's saying, and that's what I'm doing. Yeah, so don't think because when I come there, I know what my gift is, and I'm going to be able to use it. All right. For we stretch not ourselves beyond our measure, as though we reach not unto you. And Paul saying, I have been able to reach to you, for we are come as far as to you also in preaching the gospel of Christ, not boasting of things without our measure, that is, of other men's labor. Paul saying, I'm not trying to boast about what other people have done that helped me. I'm trying to focus on what I'm doing. Because that's the other thing that Paul is saying. He said, I have to recognize that that anything that God gives you to do, God's also going to allow somebody to do what? To help you. You're never going to do it all by yourself, in yourself. And that's just how God is. I pull myself up by my own bootstraps. Wait, slow down, brother. Hold it. Time out. Who gave you the boots? Where'd you get the boots from? Where'd you get the straps from? Did you make those yourself? All right. So, did you invent boots? Did you invent straps? So the whole aspect of it is that you always need some assistance. Not boasting of things without our measure, that is, of other men's labor, but having hope when your faith is increased, that we should be enlarged by you according to our rule abundantly. So my focus is just, I'm going to rejoice when you increase. That's my joy. When you start increasing, that's my joy. When I see you stepping forth and doing all that great stuff, that's my joy. Because I'm trying to help you get to where you are. Now, there you go. Look, there you go. Look, boom. Now I'm going to rejoice and rejoice in that. All right. To preach the gospel in the region beyond you. So I want to help you, and then with you, we're going to be able to go beyond you, and not to boast in another man's line of things made ready to our hand. I'm not going to say, well, I did it all by myself. I'm going to tell you what I was able to do. This person made ready to my hand something that a tool that I needed to help me help you. So why am I going to boast of somebody? Look at what I developed. Look what I did for them. No, we all. So when you see these people coming, and what Paul is saying is, when these folks come to you and tell you how wonderful and great they are, all the wonderful things they did for you, and they never acknowledge that they didn't do it all by themselves, that's wrong. I recognize that, yes, I am being used to help you. My goal is to help you. That's my goal. Help you move to where you're supposed to be. But I can't just say, well, I did it all. Because the bottom line is, we're all standing on what? That basic foundation that we talked about in chapter 8 and chapter 9. If we take away that foundation, what happens? Right, we talked about that before, right? Who's going to sit around and talk about and just brag about, oh, look at how nice this house is. And the house is really nice, but it's built on a what? On sand. And it's going to, as long as you never get any storms, and as long as you never get any rain, you're going to be fine. But let one good storm come through, and what's going to happen to that beautiful house? It's going to fall.
Just the concrete.
All right? So, but if you build that house upon solid foundation, then it'll be able to stand up in the storm and in tough times. So Paul's like, this is what we're doing. And so, yeah, I'm standing on other things. I have other foundations that I'm standing on. And I recognize that. But just because I'm standing on other foundations, I'm not going to just stand here and just be, I'm good. No, now I got to continue to build. I got to continue to work. Don't make no sense for them to build a foundation. I just stand here. What you doing? You doing that? I'm just standing here. No, you got to now. I got to start building too, because eventually, somebody is going to have to stand on what? On me. And if I don't make myself strong enough and bold enough and secure enough to be able to withstand the weight of another person, all I'm focused on, I'm just chilling, just hanging out, just doing. No, we got to be about our what? Our Father's business. All right. Verse 16. To preach the gospel in the region beyond you, and we did that, right? 17. But he,
I was saying 17.
yeah. But he that glorieth, let him glorieth what? In the Lord. All right. So when you start talking about, yes, well, I was able to help this one, but thank God, because God gave me so-and-so to help me, and God brought so-and-so into our life because we were trying to get from point A to point B, and we did okay, but then we get to the point B to point C, I struggled. But then Lord allowed this person that knew how to do that, they came in and they helped out. And so when you start looking at it, you recognize you didn't do it by yourself. It didn't just happen because you just wanted it to happen. It happened because you got instruction, and then you followed the instruction, and then you got help, and you utilized the help. Right? You got information, and you put the information to what? To good use. All those things are part of building a proper life and commitment to the Lord. Verse 18. For not he that commendeth himself is approved, but whom the what? The Lord commendeth. So a person that is not the person that's talking all about himself and bragging all about himself that's going to be the one that's going to be standing up there, receiving the reward. But it's the one who God commends. So you can talk all you want about yourself. Well, I'm this and I'm that, and I do this and I do that. Like what Jesus said about he said 2 men went up to pray. One man went up to pray and says, Lord, I thank you that I'm not like other men, like this, like that are extortioners and railers and all these other kind of things, or like this tax collector over here. He said, but the other man just wouldn't so much as lift his head towards heaven and just said, Lord, be merciful to me, a what? A sinner. And Jesus said, only one man came up from that prayer justified. And that was the man that asked God to be merciful. So, because what? That man wasn't comparing himself. He knew I was a sinner. But you know what? The other guy that was praying, is he a sinner too?
Yes.
Yes, he is. But when he starts saying, well, but I'm not a sinner as bad as he is, it don't matter. See, when you were drowning, and there's 5 people drowning, and one person kind of can swim, and the one person can't swim at all, the one that kind of can swim, if he don't get rescued, what's going to happen? He going to drown. And the one that can't swim at all, if he don't get rescued, what's going to happen to him? All right, so there you go. So I mean, therein is the point. You know, so a lot of times people think that, well, I'm a little bit better than them. I'm not like, no, you're in this sinful world, and if because you're in this sinful world, and you walk through it, guess what? You're going to have what? Sin on you too. Yes.
Going back to the both of those guys that were praying, when the one that was so boastful and high-minded of himself, he wasn't justified because he did not put on the justification, which is Jesus Christ, the blood of Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
He came out from under it. He didn't need it. He felt he didn't
need it. Yeah.
the blood, because he was all that.
Oh yeah, he's on.
So he came up unjustified because he wasn't immersed in the blood.
Yeah, he bragged about how much he gave and how much prayers he did. And Jesus said that
Bought his way out, and only Christ can buy.
only Christ can do it.
Ain't got enough to write himself out.
All right, so that's important to keep in mind. So we'll pick up again in chapter 11. Now, chapter 11, we're going to be talking about some things in here. Anybody ever heard something called, I don't know, it's a kind of a strange phrase. You ever heard something called false prophets? Ever heard of something like that? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And it's amazing, just as a highlight. You ever watch that movie Transformers? Where the thing comes and it looks like a car, but then it transforms and becomes like big old giant robot.
Yeah.
Well, from a standpoint that Paul's talking about, that there's a lot of transformations going on, and we're going to talk, and it's happening today. But things that think they're one thing, and Paul says that Satan had did what? He transformed himself into a what? An angel of light. So he says, think it no marvel that even his agents, his little imps and demons, have transformed themselves. Into what? That's what we're going to discuss. Because I think a lot of that stuff that we see in today that we really can't explain is just enemy just transformed himself into these things, so that when the rapture takes place and when God comes and takes his people, they're ready with their lie. Because they're going to have to lie. Because he can't help but lie. Because the devil is a lie. See, the devil don't tell lies. He is a lie. So it's a big difference. And so he's the father of it. And so we'll talk about that next week. That's just a little heads up about what we'll be doing on next week. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, so